Coopetition. What a great word. What does it mean? It means cooperation competition. That's the original term, but we've got this lovely term called coopetition. And during COVID-19, coopetition is becoming an incredibly important concept for us to all think through and be able to work on. Basically what it means is it's where competitors come together in order to be able to compete. There's a lovely academic definition for this. They talk about actors involved in coopetition are involved in a relationship that on the one hand consists of hostility due to conflicting interests and on the other hand consists of friendliness due to common interests. So what we're having to do at the moment, and we're finding this through relaxation of competition laws in some areas, particularly around, the supermarkets and even in some of the logistics markets as well, that people are having to work together who actually originally just a few weeks ago were seen as sort of competitors. But this has been critical to be able to do with the crisis that we're actually in. Now, coopetition has some real important concepts associated with it. So let's just actually talk about this. One of the key things about coopetition is that we have to classify really, our suppliers and our customers into sort of a couple of categories, two categories. These categories are complementers and competitors, okay? Complementers and competitors. Now, if we think about this from a procurement perspective, what we actually find is that you could say that a complementer, and here's a direct sort of definition of how we should think about this. On the supply side, a complementer is an organisation, is your complementer if it's more attractive for a supplier to provide resources to you when they're also supplying the other organisation than when they're just supplying you alone. So if you think about this might be that at the end of the day it's more attractive for an organisation to supply you with a particular product because you just don't buy the volumes required to make it worthwhile for them to make it. But if you and a number of your competitors come together, what you're able to do is to get the volumes required for your particular market. We see this in sort of, in universities, for example. There is a university-wide procurement scheme. Of course, universities, you could argue, are competitors over certain things like, courses and students and everything else. But actually, they have a complementary relationship with some of the big suppliers. If you're buying batteries or things like that, everybody comes together and that way you're able to buy at a better price, and the big suppliers actually like that as well. It's a good thing to do. But on the other hand, we have other environments where our suppliers, we're in a sort of a competitor type situation. So an organisation is your competitor if it's less attractive for a supplier to provide resources to you when it is also supplying the other organisation than when it's supplying you alone. So this is the type of situation where, at times, one great example from the world of COVID-19 has just been different nations, different companies, even different hospitals competing over personal protective equipment. At the end of the day, because there's a shortage of supply, once it's delivered to one person, it's less attractive for them to deliver it to another. So we're in this competitive sort of environment over what's going on. Now, during these times, what we start to find, however, is that some companies will fit into both categories. So there can be times when even the same company is a complementer on some products or services, but is a competitor on other products and services. And the importance of this concept is that we need to actually think about relationships in a different way. We have to manage relationships, really important, but just recognize that at the end of the day, these relationships, at sometimes you have to recognize we're now in a competitive situation. In other times, we're having to look for those joint opportunities in this complementer situation. So that's really important for procurement. Just to reflect very quickly on, the demand side then, because sometimes if we're actually selling things into the market, if we're thinking about complementers and competitors in the demand side, An organisation is your complementer if customers value your product more when they have the other organisation's product than when they have your product alone. So, you know, if you're thinking about it, sometimes there are certain things which complement each other. Strawberries and cream sort of complement each other really well. You could argue McDonald's and a Coca-Cola also complement each other really well. But an organisation is your competitor if customers value your product less when they have the other organisation's product than when they have your product alone. So if I've got a choice between, I don't know, Pepsi and Coke, all of a sudden we're in a competitor situation. Or KFC and McDonald's, we're in a competitor situation. The problem is that if we're looking at some types of products, we often find that, you know, one organisation can fall into both camps. So, for example, you might find, if you think about Intel, the chip supplier, they might be seeing that, you know, Microsoft at times is a complementer to them. So, you know, if you think about it, on my laptop, I'm running Windows, I've got an Intel chip and it's in, you know, a particular format. I, as a customer, value that because I can see that they're actually complementing each other. But at other times they're competitors. For example, you know, it might be that Microsoft are actually thinking through, I don't know, particular gaming consoles or things like that. And they're doing their own sorts of technology which actually compete with that. So there's lots of examples of companies who, it might be the same companies, but on some things you're competing, on other things you're a complementer. So, as procurement professionals whose job is to manage relationships, okay, to be able to create value across supply chains, we do need to understand this concept of coopetition and start actually thinking through the classification of those suppliers which are complementers and those which are competitors as well, and think how we can manage the relationships appropriately, particularly when they're sitting in both camps.